Hi guys, welcome to another video tutorial with me, Clarice. In this video, we are going to be painting another holiday card and it's going to look like this. For our cards, we're going to be using the Strathmore watercolor cards. They come 15 a pack with envelopes and they are absolutely fabulous. The size of this is approximately 5 by 6 inches and they are folded cards. For brushes, I'm going to be using the Princeton Velvetouch number 4 and then the Princeton Heritage number 3. For the paints, we're going to be using the Daler-Rowney set of watercolors. This is the set of 48. And we are also going to be using Daler-Rowney liquid acrylic in Volcano red for little embellishments. As usual, the links to all of these are listed in the description below, but feel free to use whatever you have on hand. And let's get started. I've gone ahead and placing my card horizontally. The other half is on this side. I have drawn or stenciled in a very small rectangle, and I'm using some masking tape just on the insides, and we're going to be painting our flowers and leaves right here on the edges. Now my edges are not perfect, but we're just going to run with this right now. And we'll perfect it a little bit later on depending on how it looks. So I'll be starting off with using my Princeton Neptune number 8 and the Princeton Velvetouch number 4. And for the first flower, we're going to start the flowers diagonally. I'll be using my yellow ochre. So I'm using the number 4 to get some yellow ochre. Use my palette here to just kind of mix it up. And then I'm keeping my number 8 handy. It's clean. I've got a little bit of water on it. And so we're going to start off with doing a little flower right here. So I'm going to create little dots for the center. And then a tinier dotted outline right around there. And then using the number 8, we're going in and we're going to start creating our petals. And all I'm doing is pulling the color from that second area, and I'm creating like a petal or loose petals around. Now we're using that color to create the petals. We want to keep this more like a white flower. So you're going to notice that the details are very much so faint. Some areas are more yellow, some are extra white, but this is the feel we're going for in terms of keeping these Christmas florals a little bit more muted because we're going to have a lot of green and red. So taking the number 8, taking a little bit of that excess color, I'm just doing a couple of dotted strokes or little kind of arc strokes around the flower. Very loose, lots of white space in between. Now what we're going to do is take some of the burnt sienna. So I'm not really washing off my brush, just taking some of the burnt sienna. And I'm going to drop that in right here. So allow that. You can see how it's kind of like seeping into the rest of it. Take the number 8 and you can just sort of help some of the color back down to the center. But again, we're using this to get some nice tones in here that are a little more earthy. You can drop a little bit more over here towards this area where it's touching the edge. Those looser strokes on the outer petals that we have. Okay, we allow this to dry a bit. Let's create something very similar down here at the bottom. So this one I'm going to do right here. So spacing out just a little bit. We're creating that circle. Dipping the tip of my brush in water. I'm going to do dots all around. And then taking my number 8. Actually, instead of the number 8, this time I will use the number 4. So I'm going to wash up my number 4. And I'm going to pull out the color into petals. Try and leave a little bit of white space if you can in between. So I'm controlling the size of this. What I'm also going to do is pull the color a little bit down to the center lines or dots, whatever you have. And we've got our little flower. So using that leftover lighter tone, we're gonna do a couple of strokes like this to kind of make it seem like it's got more folds and layers of petals. Beautiful, perfect. So getting that burnt sienna now, we're gonna go ahead and drop that in right here while it is damp, just so it kind of seeps out. Now this one seems to be dried up, so we're gonna take that burnt sienna and drop some more over here. And that is good for now. So let's continue creating some of the other elements. So for the next few elements, I'm going to use the number 3 brush. And we're starting off with doing Vandyke brown for a center. And then we'll use olive green to create little pine leaves. I had to think over there for a moment. I'm like, is it leaves or is it another word? I feel like it's another word, but let me know in the comments what the other word is, guys, if you know it, because it's evading me right now. So I'm taking the number 3 and we are going to create a couple of these pine leaves. We got to give it some direction and movement. So I'm going to have these kind of going downward here for the bottom. And then perhaps another one like this. And then for the top, we're gonna go up a little bit. We don't have too much room though, so these will be a little bit shorter. So something like that. And then let's do another one that is this way. Actually, let's do 2 that are this way. Perfect. So now that we have our placements for that, we'll figure out where else we need more. I'm going to go ahead, get some of that olive green. And you can mix it on here if you want to. Nice fine pointed tip with this color. We're going to lightly graze and create these lines coming out from here. And using that stem, the Vandyke brown as the center, fluff it up. Do the same thing for the next one. Lots of white space in between, leave it loose, leave it fun, and you're just lightly grazing the sheet of paper to paint these in. Same thing here. I'm kind of going in the direction of the stem or the branch. Okay, pine needles, I believe that's what it's called, instead of leaves. Am I right? Let me know in the comments. So now I want to give this a little bit of darkness happening where it starts from there. So I'm just dropping this color, mixed a little bit of Vandyke brown with the green, and I'm dropping some of these strokes right where it starts at the base. Same thing over here, just to create some depth. Now going back for more of the olive green, let's create the last one here. And similar idea, get a little bit of the Vandyke brown, drop that in right here. Perfect. I'm just dropping a little bit additional over here at this base just to get more depth. The next element we're going to be doing or painting is the little berries, and I have the wrong color here, so we're going to be using cadmium red, And I'm still using the number 3. I'm gonna mix a little bit of that over here. And I want to fluctuate between light cadmium red and also dark, just to get those nice depth feelings in there. You can also feel free to use something like a Madder Lake red if you want a more royal red as opposed to a bright one. And we're going to start off by doing little tiny circles. And I'll do some, we got to give it a little bit of direction as well, just like we did with these guys over here. So I'll have some happening going up this way. So very easy and simple, tiny little circles. And feel free to have them in different sizes. Leave a little bit of white space in between. Just keep it loose, keep it fun. Have a visual idea of how it's going to be connecting. And what you can also do is halfway through, just in case you're kind of like me, just take that second brush with a nice fine pointed tip. I'm going to use the number 4. And I'm going to get some of the Vandyke brown. And using the tip of the brush, we're going to paint in the stem. We're just going to join these guys together. And you can even create more. So this way you have a visual idea now of where else you want to create more of these. And just fluff up the area and add more. So I'm going to add some right here. Perfect. So I added a little bit of brown there to get a darker tone in that red. And so you can add a little bit of Vandyke brown to your red to get a darker, richer looking red for areas you want to depict as shadow berries or berries in shadows, or just a darker color of berries. So now we got to do the berries on this side. So I'm going to flip the brushes this time. This time I'm going to use the number 4 to do my berries and the number 3 to do my branches for them. So we're going to start off with doing the branches first. So we're doing 2 different techniques here. So the first one, we added the berries first, then the branches, and we're flipping it on this one here. So I want you to figure out which technique suits you best and run with that for any future paintings that you do with berries or elements that are kind of like berries that might require a little bit of pre-planning ahead like this. It just makes it so much easier when you have a game plan, or if you can visually, what's the word I'm looking for? Visualize it and then run with it. Okay, so we have that. I'm now going to take my cadmium red and we are painting in berries. Feel free to add additional berries like side by side like this. They don't have to have, what's the word? They don't have to have little branches. They could just be floating if you wanted to. So fun, loose, and easy. I'm using the same idea to create a couple more on the other 2 sides for berries. So we'll do one coming out from here, possibly. Actually, one here. Like that. And then another one coming out just this way, but not overpowering the length of these guys. And then taking some of the red, we're roughly painting in little tiny berries. Okay, so we've got some here. I'm doing additional. Now we're going to do a little bit up at the top here. And for these ones, I'm going to have them happening right here. I don't want them to be completely symmetrical to what's happening at the base. So this is my way of kind of changing things up just a little bit and having it being a tad different. Also, I'm mixing a little bit of Vandyke brown. Get slightly darker version of the berries so everything doesn't look bright and orange red. Some can be a little bit darker and there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can even drop in some of the Vandyke brown like I am on those. Perfect. So I didn't want to make this video too long, so the only other things that I've added are loose leaves like this sprig right here, this one at the top, and then little darker versions of just loose leaves around our two big flowers. Now the next thing we're going to be doing, and this is where I felt we could concentrate a little bit more time on, is adding some pine cones. And for that we're going to be using the Vandyke brown combined with a little bit of the burnt sienna. So I'm going to start off with using some of the burnt sienna, and I'm using my number 3 Heritage. And let's mix a little bit of that color on here. So it's good to start off light, and then this way you can build up with the dark. So I'm mixing about a 30-70%. And why not? Let's just get a little bit of this Vandyke brown mixed in here too, so it's not too orange. And what we're going to do is start off with painting one here at the top. So what we want to do our little cones is you start off with the very, I guess the tip of it, which is the smallest or the thinnest, and then you lightly create longer strokes and create, making sure that there's white space in between, and kind of formulate that shape like so. And I'll do it again so you can have a better look, but we're keeping it loose and we're keeping it fun. And yeah, so we don't have to go super ecstatic over making sure it looks exactly like a realistic one. As long as it gives you that impression, the white space helps, the organic shapes help. So tiny tips at the top, or tiny strokes at the top, and then thicker strokes as you go lower. Okay, so using that same mixture, we're going to create another one down here at the bottom. And this one I would like for it to be facing downward, but you know what? We're just going to go ahead and do it the way I have this set up. So let's get a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Creative. So I'm going to try and have this one kind of poking out this way. So my tip would be here. So let's do a little V for the tip, and then you want to create thicker strokes as you go lower. So something like that. And then the next thing I'm doing is just taking some more of this color, and I want to add more of that happening right at the base of the strokes that I've added. And the reason I'm adding the color now is because it's still damp and it'll give me a nice dark to light effect, which is what we need. And especially at the bottom here, we're not covering up all of that light brown. We're just kind of adding a couple of strokes the top to kind of give the edges of it some semblance of shadow. Now same thing over here. This is very loose, but once again, we know exactly what it is, so we're not overthinking the process, and we're kind of just building up on it. Okay, so something like that over here. Great. Now, if you want to go ahead and create a couple more of these on a lighter scale, kind of like peeking in and out. So for instance, say if you wanted to do, let's do one here. But I'm leaving more white space for this, just so it's aired out, as opposed to this one where it's super tight, not a lot of white space, but this one gives you the idea, oh yes, there's a second one right there. And the color differentiation and the white space is what kind of enhances that look and feel there. Now I probably shouldn't be fidgeting with this one, but I am. Let's leave this for a bit and let's add a couple more of these basic leaves. For these leaves, I'm going to continue using my number 3, and we're going to do something a little bit more like the pines that we did. And so I'm mixing some of my Vandyke brown into it just to get a slightly darker version of it. And we're going to make sure we have a nice fine pointed tip once we have a green that we like. And we're going to paint in these strands or sprigs that are taller, seemingly taller. So this place right here seems like a good spot. So something like this, and then we are extending to create little tiny branches. And then getting some of the mixture that we have, we're going to create little tiny back and forth, well, little tiny lines really. And then smaller ones for this. So essentially it's like little stems of the pine needles. Something like that. Now you can feel free to drop in some of the brown. This just gives it that more holiday, more of that holiday feel and look to it. Add some right here at this at the edge, so it looks like there's more happening in the back. And we're going to continue and do one more, or at least one more, maybe protruding downward over here, something like that. Now again, I'm doing it like backward like this because of the video. Feel free to turn your page around for better reach. This way your strokes aren't weird looking. Or if you want to challenge yourself and do what I'm doing, absolutely go ahead. That's always fun. I'm kind of adding some strokes here happening right next to the pine cone as well. Next, we're going to go back to our flowers right there, and using the number 3, I want to just enhance the centers a bit more. So I'm getting some color directly from the color cake, making sure I have a nice fine pointed tip. And also I can see a droplet of water, so I'm just going to dab that on my paper towel. This way I'm not getting a diluted version of the color, but I'm getting a rather strong and thick version of it. And using just the tip, I'm going to lightly graze, and I want to draw these little lines in to indicate the center. and then even add a mishmash of little dots as well. Just to make the center pop more. Otherwise it looks really washed out. Or you could just leave it as is too, that's totally fine. It's just this is my preference. I'm gonna do it for the second flower. And then if you've got leftover color for just adding some dots at the top. Now, if you have leftover color off the flower itself, that would be lovely, because then we can add a couple of little loose strokes of the color, seemingly in between, like over here, for instance. And we're just dropping in little dabs of this color here because we want to make sure that it's almost reflective, that there's maybe more of the flowers happening in the background somewhere, and the eye is just picking up on that kind of thing. All right, so now comes the fun part. We are going to peel off, making sure everything is dried, of course. Lightly go ahead and peel off your masking tape gently so that you don't rip the paper. And there we go. This is what it looks like. So now that that's peeled off, if you feel the urge to kind of fill in any of the areas that look like maybe it doesn't end, or isn't kind of meeting that nice firm line, giving you that nice straight line, then just take some of your extra color that you may have and you can just kind of drop it in. At least that's what I am doing for the flowers, because that was a little bit wonky over there. Everything else seems to be fine. And I have a special addition that we can make. We're going to enhance our berries using the Daler-Rowney liquid acrylic Volcano red. That's what we're using. So I'm just going to make sure I give it a good shake, and then get some of that on my palette. A little goes a long way. And feel free to use the brush that feels most comfortable to you. I'm going to use the number 3, so I get a nice fine pointed tip. And then I'm just going to take some color on the tip of my brush. What I'm going to do is drop some right over the berries that we have. Leave any white space that you see on the berries. Now, mind you, you can also do this instead of adding the base coat, which is what we used. We use watercolor for that. You could just skip that step entirely and add this right away when we paint our berries. It's entirely up to you. Another thing you could do is you can have a variety of mixes. So you can have some of them in pearlescent and some of them are in watercolor. So this way you have a little bit of glisten, but all of them are not glistening. Just a couple of different tips or ideas. You can even paint some over the leaves. This gives you some beautiful depth and makes things look a lot more cohesive and tight. Add some at the top here. Perfect. And I think on that note, we should be done. We can do, let's end off with a quick splatter, which I probably should have done while this was covered. But let's take a little bit of this. I'm going to actually mix in some of that pearlescent color with this, because red mixed with green gives you green or a different shade of green, so that totally works for me. And I'm just going to do a small splatter here, a little bit here. Now some of it is getting on the inside. I'm not totally opposed to it. I think I kind of like it. It kind of ties in nicely with everything we have done. If you don't like it, you can always take a paper towel and dab at it. So for instance, I'm just going to take off some of them. And you obviously do this while it is still wet, so you're able to take off as much as you can. I think I'll leave these ones in there just for some added additional feel. The ones that are going on the back, let's dab some of it off. So everything's officially dried up, and I went ahead and wrote greetings in the inner rectangle area. And I wanted to show you the glisten. Look how pretty and subtle that is. It is absolutely stunning, especially because the glisten looks more of a pink, like a pinky coral color, and then you've got the red. So just a great way of taking loose florals and leaves and creating like a winter holiday card. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and can't wait to see your work, so please make sure to tag me in it. And as per usual, everything that I have used for this card is listed in the description below. Thanks guys for watching, and we'll chat soon. Bye.